here's a former bantamweight champion, a former flyweight champion who's been making a lot of headlines. Triple C, Henry Cejudo, looking to become quadruple C. Is that what he's calling it? What is he calling it?
I think he already kind of called himself that because he coached Davison to a title win. So shit, if he wins the next one, he might be pentagonal champion. I don't even know. I think a pentagon has 5 sides.
The nickname needs some work, but Triple C, as I know him, he's been talking up a comeback. We were perhaps looking at him filling in that Max Holloway spot against Volkanovski, which ended up going into Korean Zombie. But then we had this kind of bit of news that came out that kind of got tossed. It kind of got proven to maybe not be true, where we thought Cejudo might have been back in the USADA testing pool, and then that, I guess, wasn't true. But there's a lot of interest in him coming back. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, if he were to come back, which fight do you prefer to see him in his comeback? Fighting the winner of Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, or fighting the winner of Alexander Volkanovski and the Korean Zombie? Obviously, one for the bantamweight title, one for the featherweight title.
No, I can't help but get interested in potentially seeing the first ever 3-division UFC champion. I gotta go. I'm more intrigued in Henry Cejudo facing the winner of Volkanovski, Korean Zombie. I know that may sound crazy, people, but we've talked endless about the potential matchup between Volk and Cejudo specifically. And I know it's a little weird to think, well, if Zombie wins, him and Henry Cejudo, that's just weird. I can't even picture that in my head in the octagon. But it's that possibility to witness history for me, and to see someone win 3 belts in the UFC is unprecedented. And what other guy to try and do it than Mr. Henry Cejudo? I mean, shit, he's got an Olympic gold medal, 2 belts from the UFC, defended both of those belts. And I know he looks pretty thick these days too, so he'd probably fill out 145 well, just not the height size. But yeah, I'm going to go him at featherweight, man, simply for that historic factor of the possibility of a 3-belt victory.
I really struggle with this one because on one hand, I love the idea of the history and him and Volkanovski especially. Like, let's be honest, we're really saying, do you rather see him fight Petr Yan or Alexander Volkanovski? Not because the two guys they're fighting, like, not saying they don't have a chance, but I'm saying it because those are the 2 matchups that are the most intriguing right now for him, I think. Yeah. So it's kind of, the assumption is if either of those guys win and hold or win their title back, who would you rather see him fight? As far as the fight, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo.
That's a hell of a matchup.
Give me Petr Yan. I think is the best fighter in the UFC, pound for pound. I've said that, like, most talented. Yeah. Obviously, Kamaru Usman, is the best in terms of what he's done. But Petr Yan, I think, is like the most talented guy, pound for pound, in the UFC. So I salivate at the idea of Yan fighting Sterling, and then if he were to win the fight TJ Dillashaw, win that fight Henry Cejudo. What a year that could be. And it's not out of the realm of possibility to beat 3 bantamweight champions in a year.
Yeah.
That's got to be like fighter of the year. I mean, you're talking legacy, all-time status right there. And I can't help but like look at that, and I kind of want Petr Yan to have that kind of opportunity. Which one do I pick though? Because I love both. I'll go with Cejudo Volkanovski. Even though I just said all that, people might be surprised, but even though the fight between Yan and Cejudo I think is a little more interesting, the reason why Cejudo Volkanovski matters so much is because of obviously history on the line. And really, I think it's such a tough fight for Henry that I'm just going to tune in to be like, can he really pull this off?
Right.
In a division that clearly he is not meant for. And I like that I think he would defend that belt if he were to win it.
Yeah, I think he would too. I mean, 100%.
Again, Volkanovski's so talented, but he's like the only guy that feels like could fight Henry at featherweight because they're at least similarly statured.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really weird if Henry goes and fights like Korean Zombie
Max
or Max
Holloway or
Holloway.
Korean
I mean,
Zombie.
what the hell? So I definitely think that for Henry, for it to really feel like a big history making moment, you gotta defend that belt. But yeah, I either one I'm like all on board with, but I'll side with the Volkanovski fight just by a hair.
Yeah, and honestly, too, for me, like the biggest thing that, outside of obviously the biggest pro I kind of mentioned was the history thing, but the con in terms of like for the bantamweight option, I just want to see that division play out. That division is on fire right now. They had such a massive year, and all these guys are just constantly pressing forward into the title contention talks. I mean, you've got these two that have to clear their history, Jan and Sterling. You've got TJ Dillashaw sitting there. You've got Merab Valishvili who's pushing his way up. You still have Corey Sandhagen who's in there. Dominic Cruz is still winning fights. That division is just unreal right now, and I just want to see all of it play out in 2022.
I agree, but yet I do kind of look at that top of the division, and I think there's potential that we're going to get a bit of what we have at welterweight right now, where if Jan beats Sterling, he will have beat Sterling and Sandhagen. If he fights Dillashaw and beats him, one of those guys behind him, he's already beat Aldo as well, who's surging right now.
Yeah.
So then you have guys like Rob Font, who took a tough loss to Aldo.
Yeah.
And then after that's when you get to Cheeto Vera.
Yeah.
But again, Jan Cejudo is awesome, but I just think there's a chance you run into. I think Jan has the potential to be like a long-term champion.
Yeah.
So as much as I do agree, it's on fire. You want to let it play out. But if Jan wins that fight, I mean, there's not a ton of options for him next. There is, but in terms of fresh matchups and fights that feel like they will go any different if they were to be a first time, it's basically Dillashaw's the only fight, really.
And that for you, I think that was a fight that you said you have to see this year, wasn't it? Jan versus Dillashaw.
It's the fight that I'm the most interested in seeing this year.
Yeah. Man.